funded by donations to the Emma Bronson Miller Enhancement Fund and to the Music Department Enhancement Funds. We are so thankful for all of our generous donors who allow us to bring these wonderful concerts for our students and the public. Please take a moment now to turn off all your recording or receiving devices. As a matter of courtesy and copyright law, there is no recording or photography permitted during the performance except what has been authorized. And this performance is being live streamed, so incoming signals on phones or iPads can interrupt that stream. And we want our more distant audience members to be able to hear the concert as well. In case of an emergency, there are 2 exits at the back of the hall and 1 exit here to my right. We don't expect there to be an emergency, but just in case, just as on planes, you need to know. We'll warn you if there's going to be a crash landing. I don't expect anything of that sort. Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the performance. I am so excited to hear Flute4.
Can you hear me? No. Oh no. Now? No. Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello?
We can. No, with your microphone.
Now is it? She did tell me there was a little bit of a delay. I'm Carla Copeland. I started teaching at Meredith College about a year ago. I'm very pleased to see the former teacher, Pam Nelson, here. Thank you for being here tonight. Our quartet is in the back. I wanted to describe a few things about the program before all of us come out here. As you may see, it says works to be selected from. We will go through and announce what we're playing and describe things just a little bit for you. We will be starting with Jonathan Campbell's Dakota Summer Scenes from the Prairie, just for your information. But I also thought it might be useful to know which player is which. You have a little bit of information about each of us, but you might not know who's who. I'm Carla. Amy is our redhead. Erinn, the brunette, and Caroline is the blonde. Years ago, I went to a theater production called The Blonde, Brunette, and the Redhead. So there we go. That's what I found for my quartet. As we go through, as I said, we will talk about a few things. Yesterday at a seminar that our quartet held, we described how we decide who plays which part. The way that we do it is we have the sheet music in hand. One person will have all of the parts. They're upside down, and we go pick one. And we go like that. The thing that's nice about that is there's no fighting over whatever part, or at least rarely. But then there's a little bit of a complicated feature in that we can't just stand at the same stand. So throughout the show, you're going to see us doing a little dance around at various points. So I'll bring the others out, enjoy the performance. If you have questions at the end, please do come up and ask us.
microphone. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, great. Well, again, thank you all for coming and joining us tonight for this concert of flute quartet music, and we are very excited to be here at Meredith College this evening. So the first piece that we just performed was called Dakota Summer. It is by an Upper Midwest native, Jonathan Campbell, who actually is trained and works more in sacred choral music than he does in instrumental music. But he was commissioned by a flute quartet that is out of Fargo, North Dakota, called the Silver Winds Flute Quartet. And what they were looking for was a piece that captured especially the Scandinavian immigrant traditions and the open prairie feeling of the upper Midwest. And if you've ever traveled up there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Endless landscapes of wheat fields that shift colors in the light, and that was incorporated, I think, in a lot of these movements, as well as a little Scandinavian jig. So the next piece that we're going to perform is actually an arrangement. It's not originally for flute quartet, but it is by an English composer named William Boyce. If you've never heard of him, don't feel bad, because I had never heard of him before we found this music. But it turns out that he was quite the man about town in London. He climbed the social ranks. He was an organist, and he climbed through the social ranks to end up being the organist for the Chapel Royal for whatever king was king at this time. I don't really care, because we broke away from them, so we're our own people now. But he also worked at St. Paul's Cathedral, and if you visit St. Paul's Cathedral in London, apparently he is buried under the dome. I visited. I don't remember a William Boyce plaque, so maybe he wasn't really that famous. But it's a charming little piece, and to testify to that, I will let you know that the first movement of this work was just featured as the first recessional piece at Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding. So this is, oh, I know, isn't love sweet? So this is the Symphony No. 1 by William Boyce, arranged for flute quartet.
So, the next piece that we're going to play for you is by a composer called Erich Owasin. And Erich Owasin is an American composer who is probably best known more for brass writing than anything else, although he has a very good relationship, long-term relationship with the New York Philharmonic, who have played his music quite a few times. The interesting thing about this piece that we're going to play for you, it's titled Harmony in Blue and Gold. And if any of you have ever gone to the Frechette Gallery in Washington, D.C., you might know of a room that is within the gallery that is an actual reconstruction of a room from a mansion in London in the Victorian period. It was actually commissioned, the room was commissioned by a man named Leland, who wanted to showcase his own personal porcelain collection. So he asked Whistler if he wouldn't mind designing the room and also creating his own works for display in this room. Must be nice to be able to do that. Anyway, Whistler went ahead with this commission, and he titled it Harmony. Well, he called it a room in Harmony in Blue. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I can't remember if it's actually Harmony in Blue and Gold or just the Blue and Gold room. I think it's Harmony in Blue and Gold. It is, thank you very much. So Erich Owasin decided that was a wonderful inspiration for a piece that was commissioned by the flute quartet Femme Fatale. So we are going to play 2 of the 4 movements. It's a rather long composition, so we've decided to play just 2 of the movements. The first one is called The Princess of the Country of Porcelain, which makes sense. And the second movement is a nice jig, and it's called A Counterpoint of Color. So I hope that you enjoy these 2 pieces, and for an assignment, if you go and look online at the Frechette Gallery, you will see a description of the room, and Whistler snuck in some interesting things in one of his portraits about peacocks. So there's your homework. the next piece in this set that we're going to play for you is my Frescobaldi. It is called Galliard and Courant, and it really needs very little introduction. It'll just tell its own story. The only thing that I will say is that it was probably originally composed for recorders, not flutes.
We have a lot of organizing to do, so it takes us a little while to get squared away. We're very, very excited to play this next piece for you. It's Flux, and it's written by Marilyn Bliss in 1988, and it is inspired by the migration of birds from north to south every fall. And you will hear at the beginning some gentle flutterings and some restless urges to begin the journey. You'll hear even a little bit of reluctance in some of the birds, and you will begin to hear the piece take flight as the birds take flight. And even at a certain point in the piece, you might even feel like you've taken flight, as it will flutter and swirl and flap all around you. And it's really quite exciting. And at the end, you will hear the joy that the birds are feeling when they sight their summer home. And at the very, very end, you will hear the birds resting, having a gentle sleep after a very, very long journey. So we hope you will enjoy Flux by Marilyn Bliss.
not exactly for which part we're playing, but it's more for how we can hear each other best in this ensemble playing the different instruments. So sometimes when Carla is playing the alto flute, it's best for her to be over there. Sometimes it's best for her to be over here, depending on what it's playing with more. So that's why we move around all the time. You might wonder, why don't you just stay put?
Okay, can you hear me all right if I do not use the microphone? Yay, that's good. The next two pieces that we're going to perform for you, the first is by Charles Delaney called Night Thoughts. Charlie, as I now call him, when I was in school, he was Mr. Delaney. Charlie is from North Carolina. He's from Winston-Salem. He spent many years teaching at the Brevard Music Center, and then he went to Illinois and ended up in Tallahassee, Florida, which is where I met him and had the great honor of studying with him. That also happens to be where I first met Caroline Bowden at that time. We were students together at Florida State University working with Charlie. So I am really pleased to have discovered this piece actually just a couple of years ago at the Flute Convention in Orlando, and it's a really sweet, wonderful composition. So I hope you will enjoy that. Then the next one that we're going to play for you also has a bit of a personal connection. That's going to be Thomas Macaulay's Behind the Eye. Tom was actually in Italy composing while his wife was teaching at a music festival with me, and she ended up performing a couple of his pieces. I sat next to him and I said, "Hey Tom, I've got some people I play with at home. What you doing in the fall? Why don't you write something for us?" He completely ignored me. Didn't do anything at all. So we met up again a few years later. I said, "So Tom, there's a flute convention coming. There are these people I play with now. I think you'll like them." So he got busy and he started writing Behind the Eye. Tom is from Florida. I'm from Florida, and we're all in North Carolina, where we obviously get the reference Behind the Eye of the hurricane. So our premiere of this piece in Orlando successfully happened. Then we were to perform it in North Carolina a year ago, and Hurricane Florence came along. This time we postponed to this year, rescheduled. Along came Dorian. Thankfully, it got on out of here. So we're very pleased to perform this piece for you. You will hear some things that we are doing that are sort of extended techniques. You'll hear some whistle tones, which are very, very soft, but you can imagine being in a home and things are beginning to get leaky with all of that wind sort of whistling through little cracks and pieces of the structure. So I think you will really enjoy that one as well. I want you to listen for two things. At one point in this, I think you will hear where the storm has gotten calmer again, and there's a bit of an eye, and then there's what happens after that eye. It will be really obvious when the hurricane is completely over, though.
Thank you.